Hello everyone, how you doing? Pastor Zach here with Neighborhood Church, and we have a few announcements and updates for you as we continue to navigate what church looks like through the worldwide pandemic. As you all know, back in early March, when the pandemic began, like most churches, we went virtual. We went virtual with our Sunday morning gatherings, our community group meetings using Zoom calls, as well as our men's and women's groups. And initially, I think that was welcomed by our church, and not just our church, the church at large. And I think it was something that, as time went on, the novelty of an online virtual church eventually wore off. I know definitely the Zoom calls for me wore off. And I think the feelings of isolation and disconnectedness really started to set in soon after we as a church did that. In addition to that, nationwide statistics have shown that church attendance during the pandemic has dropped off precipitously. Then, beginning Sunday, July 5th, as many of you are aware, we started gathering again corporately here at our building location, albeit with masks, proper social distancing in place, no childcare, and an altogether shorter service, all in an effort to try and relieve some of that isolation and disconnectedness that we all have been feeling during this pandemic. For the most part, if you've attended one of those gatherings, you know that attendance on those Sunday mornings is very low. And the antithesis to that is the awkwardness level is extremely high, again, due to everything that I've shared with you already. And so consequently, the impact our Sunday gatherings have been having on the church is really low, and it's decreased that impact. Even further, the isolation and disconnectedness that we've continued to feel during the everyday is still there with no relief to that. So, as a church leadership team, we've decided to cancel the Sunday morning gathering until after the first of the year, where we will again reevaluate the state of affairs that we're facing in this country. The last day of our Sunday morning gathering here at the building will likely be August 23rd. And rather than go back to online worship gatherings like we did for that time being, we decided as a leadership team to move Neighborhood Church into separate house churches underneath the umbrella of Neighborhood Church. Now, obviously, when you hear that, you will immediately have all sorts of questions that come up in your mind. And I'm going to answer some of them now as you continue to watch this video. And we are also creating an FAQ that will be released on Thursday of this week on our website that will hopefully answer more of those questions that you may have. But I want you to know, as always, me and the rest of our leadership team are just a phone call or a text message away if you have additional questions after watching this video and, of course, reading the FAQ and even filling out a survey that we're going to ask you to do at the end of this video. So, first, the main reason we decided to move Neighborhood Church towards house churches is so that we can strike the right balance between, first, obeying the authorities God has put over us, which we're called to do in Romans chapter 13 by the Apostle Paul, adhering in the best way that we can to the practices and suggested guidelines that they've put in place, while simultaneously, the second thing is striking that right balance while also obeying God and not forsaking the gathering together of people. And really, the means by which the house church we are hoping will accomplish is to reacquaint all of us with the ways of Jesus and to relieve a bit of that isolation and disconnectedness that we've all felt. And so that's why we've made that decision. And more detail about that will be on the FAQ online that we have for you by tomorrow, hopefully. To that end, we've created an online questionnaire where you can opt in to be a part of one of our house churches. And if some of you are even inclined to do so, be a host site or a host house and even a house church leader, which leads to a next obvious question, which is, what does it mean to opt in and be a part of a house church? So our house churches will be meeting in a pattern of 2 to 3 weeks on and 1 to 2 weeks off, very similar to how our community group gathering patterns are today. And if you opt in to participate in one of those house churches, we are asking that you commit to being at those 2 to 3 gatherings a month unless an emergency comes up or you go on vacation. We're doing that for a variety of reasons. The first is we're asking you to commit to be there because the numbers will be limited, and we are trying to keep those gatherings as small and as safe as possible. So your participation is integral to those gatherings to keep their level of effectiveness high. So we need you to be there on a consistent basis. Furthermore, if you commit to one, to opt into one, and you don't come, you could be preventing someone else from joining a house church because, again, we're trying to keep those numbers as small and as safe as we possibly can, although as a church, we are going to do our best to place everybody who wants to be in a house church in an actual house church. The next question that might be popping up in your mind, and that is, well, how do I get placed into a house church? Will it be with people I know, or will it be with people that I don't know? And listen, we know this is a hard question for everybody, and to the best of our abilities, we are going to place you with people that you're already living life with, or at least were living life with them previous to the pandemic setting in. Hence, the questionnaire that we are asking you to fill out with a phone call followed up with one of our staff or leadership team members should you choose to opt into a house church. Next, probably thinking, well, what will a house church look like and how could it be different than the current community groups that we have in place right now? And so if you were a part of a community group, you know that those were structured around hanging out with people that you love to live life with. You were having a meal together, you were connecting, quite possibly you were having spiritual or biblical discussions on those evenings, and for some of you, it was even an opportunity for you to invite people into those spaces that maybe didn't know Jesus yet or were not part of our church or were even unchurched, and you didn't have to, or at least didn't feel compelled to have that Jesus conversation that can likely make them feel uncomfortable. And so I want you to think of a house church as an extension of that community group that will gather together and resemble more of what we do on a Sunday morning. For example, on Sunday mornings, there will be a meal that you will share. There will be a time of teaching and a time to hear a word of wisdom. There will be the public reading of Scripture. There will be a time where you all and we all can pray together and hear directly from the Word, perhaps from the Lord. Perhaps some of you will receive a word of knowledge or prophecy or vision that you can share to exhort or admonish one another. And there will certainly be a time to take communion together. And so, for the time being, until we gather together again as a larger corporate body, the language of community groups is going away, and we will start using the house church language to describe how we meet together. And if you're wondering what you should do about your CG gatherings and those nights that I just described that you have, whenever you feel comfortable to continue having those, we say just have those, be safe, do things appropriately, of course, but you don't need to call them your CG or your community group gathering. Just call them a house party or a time where you want to hang out and be with other people. Which then leads into a next question is, how long do you imagine these house church gatherings will run on those mornings? What day will they be on? And what do you plan to do for childcare? Which I know is a big question for all of you out there that have children. And so first, the house church can meet on any day and time that the house church leaders and that particular house church community feels is necessary. We're not putting anything as far as a requirement on the day that you meet. Mine will probably meet on Sunday mornings just because it's convenient for us. We envision them going roughly an hour and a half to 2 hours where you would again have that meal together. And during this time, which is something unique that we're going to do, Neighborhood Church will be providing both a food stipend as well as a babysitter stipend to all the individual house churches so that you can get a babysitter to separate out the children and to have some more adult spiritually led time where the children are taken care of, and also to help defray some of the costs for food. The only caveat to that is that you will have to decide how you're going to do food and how you're going to spend that money as a house church, as well as you're going to have to arrange for the babysitter to show up on your particular day and time. And if you're wondering, well, who out there can babysit? We have a few options available to us. Finally, this is something unique too. This is again to help those attend a house church gathering, is that there might be some families out there, some parents out there that have kids that might not want to bring their children to a house church gathering, whether it be because of safety or truthfully, you just kind of want that time off. You want that day off. To that end, we are providing you a $10 per child credit on the day that the house church will meet, so that you can get your own babysitter and have your children babysat and taken care of at your residence if you're so inclined to join a house church and feel led to do so in that way. So listen, our goal during this time of uncertainty, of isolation, and disconnectedness is to provide you all with some certainty, with some clarity, and to hope to reestablish some of that connectedness that we are all longing for. And we are seeking to move to house churches as a way to reconnect you to a gospel community where you can continue to grow and learn to become better followers of Jesus and grow in your relationship of loving God and loving others. And so we know that during this time, not everyone that considers Neighborhood Church their family will opt into participating in a house church. And so for those folks, if that's you, don't worry. We are still going to continue to have an online presence so that you, along with the house churches, can continue to learn virtually together and grow and foster your relationship with Jesus. And so, as always, like I said earlier, me and our leadership team will be available via text, phone call, Facebook Messenger, whatever it may be, to answer any more questions that you may have. And I know there are probably lots. And keep in mind, this will not be our only communication. We will be unveiling different steps as we go throughout the month of August, with hopes that we would launch these house churches beginning the week after Labor Day in early September. And so here is what I need from you all who are watching, who are listening, and who are part of the Neighborhood Church family. Whether it's you, and if you have a family, we want you to let us know via the questionnaire that you're going to find linked to this posting, and certainly through Text in Church and things like that. We need you to decide and pray through if you are going to opt into participating in a house church. Furthermore, we need you to let us know that if you would be willing to be a host home for a house church, and even if you'd be willing to be a house church leader, because we have our work cut out for us to take time over the next month, maybe 5 weeks, to get everyone placed who wants to be a part of our newly formed Neighborhood House Church network. Secondly, as I've just said, we're looking for house church leaders as well as host homes for these house churches. And so if you feel inclined to do so, please let us know through the questionnaire. And finally, we need you to continue to pray and to continue to tithe, because this work has grown for our leadership team and has taken on a different level of the amount of work that we have to put in to resourcing our church kind of Stark County wide to make this happen as we take this new direction, at least until the pandemic clears up and some of those restrictions are removed and we can begin to gather again collectively as a church body. And so, as we close, I just want to thank you guys all for taking time to watch this video. And I want you to know that I'm really looking forward to growing with all of you during this next season that Neighborhood Church takes a jump into. Thank you guys all, and as always, we are available for any questions that you may have. Goodbye.